If we need to keep growing our economy, we need to start hiring people in property and workplace and facilities. And I think we need to go back to the basics and look at how we can use the physical space. I don't advocate for people to be in 5 days a week. I think that's counterproductive. I think that's the way the world should go. It should be about trust. LSH have been really helpful in identifying the properties that are really the best quality. You know, in every industry brings completely different skills.
Welcome to the People and Property Equals Progress podcast, brought to you by Lambeth Smith Hampton. Here we go beyond the bricks and mortar and take a deep dive into the fascinating stories behind the business. What makes LSH unique isn't the property market that they operate in, it's the people that drive it forward. The breadth and diversity, the imagination and the ambition of their people. Every episode, we'll sit down with an inspiring guest and they'll share their journey, their vision and their passion. So let's get started. Right, Matt, thank you for coming on the podcast. Will you explain who you are, what you do, and your involvement working with LSH?
Yeah, sure. So firstly, thank you for welcoming me. It's probably my second podcast that I've ever done.
Amazing.
So extremely excited to be here. Thank you very much. What the best thing to do is for me to probably start right at the beginning. So, you know, who I am, where I came from, you know, what my background is.
Like I'm still a black. Who are you and where'd you come from? You won't remember that. You're far too young.
This isn't a dating show. We're not going to have someone behind the wall though over here, are we? I've seen crazier things. So yeah, I know you mentioned earlier, you know, your father was a chartered surveyor. Mm-hmm. I started my life studying surveying, although I never went down the chartered route. I kind of fumbled my way through, as lots of people in property do. You don't really know where you're going. When you're at school, you know, a lot of the career options are presented as you can be a doctor or a nurse, or there's really not much property stuff around.
Which is weird because property encompasses so much. It's so broad that there would be a role for so many different personalities.
Yeah,
Very
and you'd
strange.
think, and some really interesting facts that I've been looking at recently is 15% of GDP in the UK is all around property and workplace and facilities, and people just don't realise that.
That is huge,
it's
isn't
a
it?
huge
Yeah.
amount. And then by 2030, there's going to be a skills shortage of about 20% in this market. So if we need to keep growing our economy, we need to start hiring people in property and workplace and facilities and everything.
Which is
like
almost
that.
kind of why we want this podcast to get out there, because we want to show that there's people behind property. Like, property isn't bricks and mortar, it's the people and the passions that absolutely make it. So that's why we start this podcast, to talk to people like you so that other people can realise it's an avenue that they should tap into.
Yeah, and it starts at grassroots, because I didn't know anything about it at school. So I had no idea there was an option. And given it's 20% of the UK economy nearly, I mean, why aren't school children being told about the opportunities in property and all the things that come with it and the benefits to it? So I think we're missing a big trick, and that's partly on our education system, but it's partly on the industry and the professionals like us within the industry to start championing it a bit better.
So how did you, and what moment was your eureka moment of, I've got a role in this industry?
It's a good question, and it was an interesting one. I was studying surveying. I didn't really know if I wanted to go into surveying, as most people do. Quite an academic subject. It's quite difficult to link it with a job and what that means is that job. It's, you know, it's quite out there and not very easy to understand. But I was walking through town with a CV after working in a bar. I bumped into one of my old friends from school, a girl called Jenna, who worked for Prudential, you know, Prudential Assurance, of one of the biggest companies in the UK, and she worked on a corporate real estate help desk. I literally just bumped into her and go, I'm looking for jobs. Have you got anything? And she goes, well, you wouldn't believe it, but there's part of Prudential's called corporate property, and there's a help desk, like a facilities help desk. And they've got some positions going. Would you like to interview? And I was like, sure, why not?
So
Let's give it
that
a go.
came from a real life person-to-person connection.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Just bumping into someone.
Yeah, fate, sliding doors.
It is. It was really strange. And then, you know, I was there for 5 years in total, but I ended up making my way up into management and moving to London. So I moved from Reading to London for a role with Prudential, and I looked after some really interesting buildings for.
Was Jenna? Was she still around? Did you always thank her, grateful for her?
She only lives 5 minutes from me now.
Oh, are you still friends
yeah,
now?
we're still
that's
friends.
Amazing.
And she still lives in Reading as well, but I moved to London and I've more recently moved back. But yeah, there were some really fascinating buildings there that caught my attention and got me interested in property a bit more than I was before.
Was there one building in particular?
You've probably walked past it over
Okay.
the years if you've been in London a long time.
Yeah.
It's just on the border between Camden and the City of London. It's
Okay.
a big red brick property.
Right.
Down on Chancery Lane. It's called Holborn Bars, and it used to be Prudential's original head offices back in the 1890s. So a long time ago, but it's got a really fascinating background because it was an architect called Alfred Waterhouse who designed it, along with many other very fascinating properties in the world, like the Natural History Museum
Oh wow, okay.
You
So
know, like
detailed.
some,
Is it very
yeah.
detailed, this building?
It's
Intricate.
very quite gothic.
Yeah.
Red brick stands out like a sore thumb amongst all the glass and everything
Yeah.
else down the road. But
And it's still completely preserved from 1890.
it's grade 2 listed. There has been some changes, but yeah, that always stands out to me. Not just for the building though. I mean, the world of work is changing. Everything is focused more on people. And when you read about the history of Prudential, which was really where I first worked, they really looked after their people, like the Cadbury's family. They were one of the first businesses to have open plan offices, which is very unusual in those times. Yeah. Everything was, cellular. Senior people have offices, private offices, and secretaries sitting up front. They didn't. They had all sorts of
barriers down.
No, exactly. Yeah. And it was just a very different way of working. They had lots of employee benefits, free staff canteens, separate spaces for women and well-being and exercise and things that you've probably never heard of.
That was really foresighful.
It was. Although it's trickled away over the years. I mean, I think that's more relevant today than it ever has been.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one. That got me a little bit more interested in buildings and architecture than perhaps I was before, honestly.
And where's your trajectory gone since then? Because, I mean, I know you're at Softcat now, but that is new as well.
It is new.
What was the pathway of Matt from then, that young guy who's like, right, I found my place, to where you are now?
It's an unusual road. So I went from Prudential to a Russian stockbroker in the city, run by two Russian oligarchs, Andrei Dashin and Andrei Vedykin. It was very different. I was there for a couple of years, but, it was a fascinating time, understanding the money markets. I was head of facilities management there. It was a slightly different proposition there. It was a smaller business, so it was more traditional, but fascinating stuff. And then from there, I moved into this.
How was that culturally, to go from, someone with so much legacy in the UK? Really?
Yeah, it was quite a similar. It's probably financial services.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of the legacy at Prudential had been diluted over the years.
Okay.
So although they had, these like the BBC do, right? These fascinating archives of all of their history dating back to the 1890s, 1880s, and when they insured 30% of the UK market. It was similar. There were lots of similar trends, similar professionals, a very regulated environment. So lots of similar themes. And from there, I've moved around a bit, in all honesty. I've worked almost a startup pharma technology company from about 2015 till 2022, which is called Medidata. And towards the end of that employment, Medidata was running the majority of all COVID vaccine trials.
Oh, wow, yes.
On their technologies.
Oh, my gosh, that one must have been a detour when you were there.
Very
Suddenly
crazy.
This COVID pandemic comes in.
It was bonkers. It was absolutely bonkers. I've worked for some massive technology companies and media companies like Bloomberg and ServiceNow.
What is it about you with your skill set that means that you can be so versatile in all these very much different worlds?
It's a difficult one to put a finger on. I don't like to think of myself as a people pleaser, but that certainly comes into it. So I feel like I can be not a chameleon, but I can adapt to different situations and different scenarios without too much stress. I know a lot of people, you can stay in a job for 15, 20 years and do the same thing day in, day out. Yeah. But I would get bored.
So you need excitement, you need change.
I think so. And I want to learn, It's all well and good being in the same industry and office for 15 years.
That's great. I love that, because so many people get, in that comfort zone. And, I talked to Ezra from LSH, and he has people who've been in the company for 30 years, but his job there is to continually demand something new of them so that they learn about themselves, which is so important when you have a long role. But you get that from changing your role.
You do, and every industry brings completely different skills. At Endeavour, we had huge TV studios in Uxbridge, along with all sorts of international businesses that I managed, that were offices, modelling agencies, marketing agencies, including things like the Premier League production suite, Stockley Park in Uxbridge.
Should we talk about VAR?
It kept me up at night a lot of the time.
I mean, it kept the fans up at night, but you were the man behind it. I mean, that must have been huge.
Well, it was Ben and Ollie who looked after it on behalf of the FA and the Premier League. Our team, my team was responsible for the facilities and maintenance and all of the things associated with it. So on a Saturday or a Sunday or even a weeknight sometimes if football's on, and we have an outage, there's probably lots of liquidated damages in contracts with things like that. I was always on red alert. So, oh God, what's that email? Oh, it's just LinkedIn. Oh God, what's that? Oh no, it's just a Facebook
because
notification.
VR, it was so new, but now it's so expected. And even in tennis, I remember watching Wimbledon last year, and obviously automatic line judging now, and it didn't work a couple of times. And that, the whole world got involved with this missed line call that was completely out. And then it was like, right, okay, we need technology, but there has to be people behind the technology to manage it when it does go wrong.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, because I know Ben and Ollie get grilled a lot, especially in the newspapers. But in reality, some of it's automated, but there's a people aspect to it, and the ultimate decision is based on a people decision. Yeah. So there's still a degree of risk that there is a wrong decision, but it's just making a better informed decision, I think. So yeah, anyway, it was fascinating to watch that. Yeah, and we had CBS studios there, and we did all sorts of BBC things there over the years as well, because we had big studios. We also had BT Sports over there that fell under my remit,
yeah.
which ended up being Warner Brothers Discovery.
Which is
they bought
huge
it out.
now.
I'm not sure if you've been there over the years. You may well have for some kind of TV interview.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fascinating stuff. Very, very different. And we had a big portfolio of offices as well. Came along with that covered UFC, WWE wrestling, and a broad range of businesses.
So did you change all of those sites for the demands of each TV production coming in?
To some extent. I mean, broadcasting, there was a lot of individual small projects associated with independent broadcasting agreements, whether it was the World Cup or very bespoke things. So there were chops and changes all the time because we had to bring in different broadcasting equipment, different teams.
Yeah.
We had a ton of freelancers
So you
on the
worked
book.
with so many people on that role.
It was very, very diverse. We even had the Hollywood talent agency, William Morris Endeavour, over around the corner actually in Oxford Street. Talent agents, including the manager for Adele and all sorts of other celebrities. And it was fascinating stuff. Quite high pressure sometimes, especially the TV bit, which you probably know all about. But
Was that hard to step away from?
people questioned it to go, why do you want to move away from such an incredible company? And, there were lots of positives, but there was a lot coming down the line that I could see with divestment and things like that. So I saw the writing on the wall that there was probably going to be broken up. And
Did you see a safer
I'm a forward thinker.
pathway?
Yeah, some people sit and wait.
Did that change that you made there must have been the same time you became a father? So did you want some stability knowing that your role as a person was changing, so then what you can give to a company is slightly different?
Probably subconsciously. And that was one reason I left Bloomberg, right? Bloomberg's a big media business. I used to, with many others, run the enormous Bloomberg head offices down in Bank, which was 5,000 people or so. Quite demanding. I needed to be there at 8 o'clock every day, be there 5 days a week most of the time. It was 24/7 broadcasting, as you probably know. Having a child, my wife became pregnant after lots of rounds of IVF that failed, strangely. We managed to get pregnant naturally.
Oh, congratulations.
Which was lovely. But then that role didn't really suit me. So I moved to a very flexible company called ServiceNow, big Fortune 500, based in the US, who are very flexible. And I still love the colleagues I used to work with at ServiceNow and Bloomberg as well. But that's why I made that move at the time. And ultimately, I want to learn new things, take on new challenges, and new opportunities have come up more recently, including at Softcat.
Have you been challenged moving out the offices to Reading and having a different type of pool to choose employees from than being in London?
Softcat has got quite a diverse property portfolio, so all the way from Glasgow right down to Southampton, Dublin. We've got some offices in the US, in Washington, and we've got a small office in Singapore as well. So pretty much all cities in between, because it's a fantastic market for us. There's, it's not too saturated. We've got about 5% of the VAR market, so it's value-added resellers in IT equipment and services. So we sell a lot of Microsoft. So we normally go for traditional big cities. I used to work in Chiswick, which was where the IMG head offices were before here, and I'm based in Marlow, which is a lovely riverside town.
Beautiful. Yeah.
It's a lovely working environment.
I did all my rehab Marlow for some reason.
Oh, wow.
I think there's a British Olympic training centre there.
Yes, I'm sure you know all the local areas and hotspots.
I used to stay in this haunted mansion, though, and I had sleep monitors on because obviously you're injured and you're going there to get better. So everything is considered, every data is collected. And they'd be like, Chemmy, you are not sleeping well. I'm like, I don't know what it is. And then the next week, a different athlete would be in that bedroom. I'm like, hey, we've just realised no one sleeps well in that room. So they decided that this room was haunted in this place that we used to stay in Marlow. So I don't think.
And you went back?
Yeah. Oh, well, unfortunately, I kept getting injured, so I did keep going back.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But it's a beautiful part of the world. So let's talk about a building or a place. Over the years, you've been to many, many places, especially with work, all these differences that you've had that has changed you.
I think it comes back to that first property. So Holborn Bars on Chancery Lane on the outskirts of
I'm going to have to go and walk
Camden.
there after this.
It's a beautiful building, and you'll see lots of similarities with that
So
building.
do you definitely go towards traditional buildings? Is that
I don't. So
okay?
And there's one reason why. I think the world's going more towards sustainability and sustainable buildings and more technology. And with buildings like that, it's really difficult to retrofit sustainable solutions. So although I love them, they're normally poorly insulated.
Yeah, problematic for you.
You can't change. Yeah, they're really problematic.
But I do love that when you walk through the City of London and you've got beautiful redesigned new builds that are ticking every box, and then next door to it is a building that has been there for centuries. I think it makes it so special, because if it was all, when I envisage Singapore and it's all these high rise, it loses that culture, that legacy that we have in London.
It does, and I know obviously the war made a big impact on London in particular. So, and we did did lose a lot of those traditional looking buildings, but some of them survived. That was one of the buildings to survive. I think it was repaired. But yeah, that's always left a mark on me, and I always remember that as a positive time. That was my first management role as well, and perhaps I didn't deserve at the time. I didn't have that much experience, so it was a bit of a blag.
What would you change to accelerate progress in the world of property?
The first one we did touch on, which is improving the grassroots understanding of the industry as a whole within the education sector, because kids go through school, they study all of the same subjects that they've always studied, maths, sciences, etc., etc. Some are relevant, like geography, probably some economics and maths in property, because, you know, some of that's applicable to managing property. But I think we need to do more getting people into the industry. Even if it's at 16, you can go through an apprenticeship rather than committing to spending 30 grand or 50 grand on a degree these days to become chartered. There are other options, but I still feel like there's more we can do to get individuals that don't perhaps know what they want to do, at least make them aware of what there is in the industry. And the second is all about productivity. Over the last 15 years, facilities or corporate real estate for businesses has really been looked at as a cost, especially if you listen to a company like Jamie Dimon and some of the big CEOs of these banks. It's a cost, we need to keep costs down. It's just get in and do your job kind of attitude. But I think that's changing, and if you only listen to Rachel Reeves yesterday on the morning radio going on and on about productivity dip, how can our industry contribute to that? And I think it's all around designing these workplaces that not are just inclusive, because that should be a hygiene factor, but are well thought out for the population that uses them.
Would you do something completely different then?
I think you just need to be willing to change year over year. So perhaps the property that we build for our employees at Softcat this year, if we did the same thing in 5 years, the demographic might have shifted, employee desires might have shifted. And even if you go back to some of the original psychologists that determined your hierarchy of needs, like Maslow or Hertzberg, who explored motivation and physical office, I think Hertzberg still hit the nail on the head with that, because he was all about driving employee motivation through an effective working environment. Over the years, that's been diluted, and it's been used to some extent, but I think we need to go back to the basics and look at how we can use the physical space.
How do you feel then about the evolution of flexible working hours and people not going into the office? Do you feel like that's counterproductivity?
I don't think so, no. So I don't advocate for people to be in 5 days a week. I think that's counterproductive. It's a very different workforce and environment to what it was in the 90s. Most of the time, I've got a 3-year-old. 2 people working in most households is very common. In the 90s, it was probably one salary could afford a house, a car, and one person would stay at home, either a mother or a father. Today is different. So we need a lot more flexibility in the offering. And at Softcat, and that was one of the reasons why I joined Softcat, is very much not about mandating what you need to do. It's about the individual, what works for you. Yes, there's obviously some dependencies depending on which team you are. If you need to travel to see customers, if perhaps you need to be on site for certain physical roles like IT or whatever. But in general, it's all about the individual, and I think that's the way the world should go. It should be about trust.
If you put the people first and they get the responsibility on themselves to be their best, then they will deliver their best. I think sometimes we mould everyone together and be like, right, this has worked before, so it's work now. But like you said, we've got to evolve. How would you characterise your working relationship with LSH?
So we've had a very busy year at Softcat. We're around 3,000 employees or so at the moment, give or take. We've got offices all over the UK, and by March next year we would either have refurbished or relocated all of our UK offices. Since I've started, we would have done all of them, excluding the US. It's been absolutely mental.
Was that a business choice, or just everything need to happen at once?
Some of it was the life cycle of real estate, where leases come up, you have to make a decision at certain times. But we're growing so quickly. We're growing 10% year over year organically at the moment. And when you're 3,000 people, you run out of space very quickly. So they've helped us with lots of acquisitions and disposals over the last 12 months, from London, Birmingham, Bristol, Manchester, Dublin, and we're going to do Glasgow and other things coming up as well. So it's been very, very busy. But working with a company like Lambert Smith really does make that process easier, because it's very quick.
There's also got to be a lot of trust, because you're trusting them to know the whole of the nation, and that's why one of their strengths is that they have knowledge of the whole of the UK. So it's easier for you to then deal with just one body on all of your moves, because you are also up and down the country. Yeah,
it needs to be scalable, right? I'm not going to work with a local provider that can do, the southeast or
create a relationship with them and then have
it doesn't work. So I pick up the phone to Derek, and I waffle on my demands to him, and he's very quick to act, and that's what we need, because some of these decisions are so quick that we just haven't got time to mess around. An interesting topic as well that I did want to touch on was around sustainability. So every time we have moved office, LSH have been really helpful in identifying the properties that are really the best quality in terms of energy performance, so EPCA, or that have really decent sustainability criteria. Whether it's LEED, BREEAM, some of these accreditations that you may or may not have heard of, but are really important for us as a business as we have quite bold net zero ambitions. So every one we've moved into this year has been at a higher standard of sustainability, environmental impact than the ones that we've had before. So
that's amazing that you as a company have put that, as part of your needs. Like, this is very high up, because a lot of people are still kind of looking short term of, we'll do something now that is fast, especially because you're moving and growing so quickly. It would be easier to go, right, we've got to do this straight away. Whereas you're looking long term, actually, does this fit our sustainability model? And actually trusting LSH to deliver that is bold.
Yeah, it is. And when I submit a board paper, one of the criteria of approving that board paper is that we deliver a sustainable property. And that's not just at the acquisition stage, so the building itself is sustainable. We have to deliver whatever we install or build as our office and our floor also sustainable and good for employee health and well-being. So we've got various other certifications that we follow up with as well. So it's really critical. We put that in our sustainability paper that is public, and there are lots of commitments around that. So
is that where aircon comes in?
Well, aircon, yeah. I mean, people probably don't realise, but air conditioning is about 15 to 20% of all global carbon emissions. Property industry has a huge responsibility to improve that.
I think that's almost as much as travel.
Yeah, pretty much. But I'd love the idea that we can reduce our carbon footprint as an industry just by reducing our air conditioning emissions.
So what do we do then instead of that? Because obviously we've got climate change means that we've got some incredibly versatile weather. I work a lot in sport and in broadcasting, and I was on a panel the other day where in skiing we're talking about really cold temperatures coming in, but in sports like football and cricket and tennis we're seeing fans pass out in the stands because of the heat that they're having to contend with. So how do we expect people in companies working on site to be able to be as efficient as they can without aircon? What can we do?
So you don't need to affect the temperature. So some of the technologies out there, you can reduce your emissions through more effective air purification systems, essentially cleaning the air that you've got rather than pumping in hotter or colder air and conditioning it. If you've got the ability to clean what we've got in here, for example, and keep CO2 levels to a decent level and other particulates and VOCs, then you wouldn't need to pump in hot or cold air and condition it. So there are lots of really interesting pieces of technology out there that can mitigate that.
Oh, this is fascinating. I'm all about sustainability in my world. So hearing about how we can implement it into, that stat was really quite shocking. 20% from aircon units.
It's a lot. I mean, look at the City of London. I mean, every single building has a plant on the roof with tons of air conditioning systems installed in them.
So is there enough money being put behind looking at that as a future sustainability option?
I think so. I mean, Renser are doing pretty well, engaging with companies like PwC and other commercial businesses where they're looking at pushing these kind of solutions. But there's not that much trust in some of these sustainability solutions over the years. Businesses have been accused of greenwashing. I think we're really at a point now where we need to build credibility back into some of those industries where these are genuine solutions.
Well, it's great that you're so passionate about it, and that's something really different. I've not heard anyone talk from that perspective. So
my wife's also in sustainability.
Oh, is she?
So, yeah, she's far more passionate than I am about it.
So at home, are your dinner topic conversations either your daughter or talking about office sustainability?
She's way bigger picture than I am. I'm just on offices. So
you're both creating ripple effects. So thank you for coming here today and talking so much about, you have been everywhere, done everything, and it's fantastic to hear that you're still passionate about pushing yourself and evolving through new roles. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.